Welcome to the debate. Before we begin today, we do have a mandatory disclosure. This show was created by the WebFit news community using responsible AI tools for research, scripting, and visual support, with the goal of simplifying complex health science for New Zealanders. At WebFit News, we believe AI should support informed discussion, not replace professional expertise. And please also note the following disclaimer. This content is provided for general informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, nutritional, or professional health advice. Readers and viewers should consult a qualified healthcare provider for any personalized health guidance. Okay. With that established, let's turn to the landscape of Aotearoa. It creates this really fascinating biological paradox. I mean, we often think of New Zealand as this pristine paradise, but from a biological standpoint, living here is actually something of an endurance sport. We're under a thinner ozone layer, so we're subjected to intense ultraviolet radiation. And this drives oxidative stress. It's essentially, rusting our cells from the inside. But that same environmental pressure forces our native plants and animals to develop these incredibly robust chemical defenses just to survive. So today we're debating a really fundamental question of longevity. Is the regenerative blueprint of New Zealand's native diet, our mussels, our berries, our rongoa, is it really sufficient to turn back the biological clock? Or, as my colleague will argue, are our modern dietary habits creating a metabolic trap that's accelerating aging faster than any superfood can possibly compensate? I am the advocate, and I believe Aotearoa offers a scientifically validated nutritional shield that actively stimulates cellular repair.
And welcome to the show. I am the dissenter. And look, it's a beautiful theory you have there, and I absolutely respect the potency of our native resources. I really do. But we have to look at the scoreboard. We can talk about antioxidants all day long, but if we ignore the three drivers of accelerated aging, oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, and glycation, then we're missing the forest for the trees. My position is that adding healthy food is almost futile without drastically removing the pro-aging factors first. You just can't supplement your way out of a high-sugar, high-heat diet.
Okay, let's begin with our position statements, just to set the stage. When I look at the research around longevity in Aotearoa, I don't just see a grocery list of, healthy ingredients. I see a mechanism for structural protection. Modern geroscience has moved beyond chronological age, the number of candles on your cake, to biological age. And this is the real metric. It measures how your DNA is holding up, your inflammatory burden, and your epigenetic markers. My core argument is that New Zealand's native bioactives provide a form of what I'd call borrowed resilience. Because our plants and our marine life face such high UV stress, they produce these concentrated phytochemicals to protect themselves. And when we consume them, we're not just eating calories, we are ingesting the plant's own defense system. This then triggers our bodies to activate their own endogenous antioxidant systems.
So we aren't just patching holes in the hull. We're reinforcing the steel itself. The evidence suggests a diet aligned with this regenerative blueprint can effectively slow the rate of biological decline.
And I see why you emphasize the potential of these foods. I mean, the biochemistry is seductive. It really is. But I would frame the reality quite differently. We are currently living in a modern metabolic trap. The science identifies those three specific drivers of biological aging I mentioned earlier: oxidative stress, which damages our DNA, chronic low-grade inflammation, or inflammaging, which sort of rots us from the inside out, and these advanced glycation end products, or AGEs, which stiffen our tissues. My argument is really based on the sheer overwhelming force of the modern environment. We have statistics showing that over half of New Zealand adults exceed sugar guidelines. We have a culture that's obsessed with high-heat cooking, the barbecue, which creates these massive loads of AGEs. So while I agree that the native foods have potential, the current data suggests that the pro-aging exposures they're dominant. If your house is on fire, you don't need a carpenter to install new energy-efficient windows. You need a fireman to put out the flames.
That is a vivid metaphor, but I think it creates a false dichotomy. We can put out the fire and rebuild the house at the same time. In fact, the materials I'm talking about almost act as a fire retardant. So let's move into our core debate, starting with the marine environment. I want to focus on the green shell mussel, Perna canaliculus. This isn't just a shellfish, it's a powerhouse of structural repair. The research highlights that these mussels are rich in glycosaminoglycans and unique omega-3s like EPA and DHA. But let's break down what that actually means for the listener. Glycosaminoglycans they're the building blocks of our cartilage and our joint fluid. Clinical trials at Massey University have shown tangible reductions in knee pain among older adults consuming these mussels. This is direct evidence of joint lubrication and cartilage support. And on top of that, they provide niacin for DNA repair and selenium for thyroid regulation.
This is a food that actively counters the wear and tear of aging. It's not just nutrition, it's mechanics. When you maintain mobility through joint health, you maintain the ability to exercise, which is, the ultimate longevity drug.
Right. And I'm not denying the nutrient profile of the mussel. It's impressive on paper. But I'm sorry, I just don't buy that it's a silver bullet in the context of the average kiwi gut. We have to talk about bioavailability. You can eat the most nutrient-dense food on the planet, but if you can't absorb it, it's just expensive waste. The source material notes that a huge portion of the population suffers from a fiber deficit due to low vegetable and whole grain intake. This disrupts the gut microbiome and promotes systemic inflammation. So if your gut barrier is compromised, if you're in a state of inflammo-aging, you're not absorbing those glycosaminoglycans effectively. You're just throwing nutrients into a leaky vessel. The inflammation in the gut lining essentially shuts the door on these complex molecules.
But the omega-3s in the mussels actually help to repair that gut lining. It's a cyclical benefit. You're assuming the door is locked, but the food itself is the key.
Only if the inflammation isn't completely overwhelming the system. And let's be practical for a moment. How are people eating these mussels? Are they taking high-grade, freeze-dried mussel powder where the lipids are intact? Or are they eating battered, deep-fried mussels down at the pub? The delivery mechanism matters. Deep frying oxidizes those precious omega-3s, turning a solution into part of the problem. You take a pristine source of anti-inflammatory fats and turn it into a pro-inflammatory bomb by dunking it in hot vegetable oil.
I agree that preparation is key, and we will get to the cooking paradox shortly, but you're dismissing the systemic benefits too quickly. Let's look at another marine giant, New Zealand king salmon. It has a much higher oil content than many imported varieties. And this isn't just about heart health, it's about the astaxanthin content. Astaxanthin is a carotenoid, it's what makes the salmon pink. But biologically, it acts as an internal sunscreen. It provides systemic photoprotection against UV-induced damage. In a country with our UV levels, having a dietary compound that protects the skin from the inside out is, well, it's revolutionary. It directly counters one of your three drivers, oxidative stress from radiation. This is exactly what I mean by borrowed resilience. The salmon concentrates the astaxanthin to protect its eggs, we eat the salmon, and we gain that shield.
That's a compelling argument on astaxanthin, and the science on internal photoprotection is solid. But again, context is king. Have you considered the lipid load context? You mentioned the higher oil content for cognitive resilience, but if that salmon is introduced into a body that is already struggling with insulin resistance, which, given the sugar stats, is pretty likely, those lipids are processed very differently. The material points out that oxidative stress damages membranes and proteins. If someone is consuming processed meats, bacon, salami, ham, which are high in sodium and nitrates, they are actively inducing vascular stress. The salmon has to fight this massive uphill battle against the arterial stiffness caused by the salami. It's a tug of war. The salmon is pulling toward flexibility, the processed meats are pulling toward stiffness. And right now, looking at consumption data, the processed meats are pulling a lot harder.
I think they're painting a picture of inevitability that disempowers the listener. The point is that we can choose the salmon over the salami. And when we do, we trigger these powerful pathways. We are not passive recipients of our environment. And this leads me to our second point, botanical interventions. You mentioned we can't just add healthy food, but I would argue that certain NZ plants act as switches, not just as fuel. Look at New Zealand blackcurrants. They contain these unusually high concentrations of anthocyanins. And these aren't just passive antioxidants waiting to be used up like a sponge. They are signaling molecules. They activate the NRF2 pathway.
Okay, let's clarify that for the audience. What exactly is the NRF2 pathway?
Well, think of NRF2 as the master antioxidant switch in your DNA. When it's flipped on, it regulates over 200 protective genes. It tells your body to produce its own antioxidants,
like glutathione and superoxide dismutase. This is active longevity. It improves vascular health, lung function, mental alertness. By consuming these berries, we aren't just dampening the fire with a bucket of water, we're upgrading the entire sprinkler system to run automatically.
I appreciate the mechanism of NRF2. It is fascinating science. It's that concept of hormesis. A little bit of stress from the plant triggers a big defense in us. But we have to look at the epigenetic reality that blocks that switch. The source material explicitly links high consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages to accelerated epigenetic aging, even in young adults. I mean, this is terrifying. We are seeing biological aging outpace chronological aging in people in their 20s. So you talk about the black currant acting as a switch. Well, sugar acts as a wrecking ball. High sugar intake promotes insulin resistance. And here's the crucial connection. Insulin resistance interferes with cellular signaling. If your cells are deafened by constant insulin spikes, their ability to hear that NRF2 signal from the black currant is severely compromised. You're flipping the switch, but the wiring is cut.
That's a fair concern, but the research implies that the bioactives can help restore that sensitivity. And we also have Ramboa mauri, specifically plants like kawakawa. The research shows it contains pelatorine and anion-gambin. These compounds directly modulate inflammatory signaling. This is traditional knowledge being validated by modern molecular science. It protects the heart and helps manage that exact inflammation you're so worried about. And let's not forget gold kiwi fruit, which provides vitamin C that's critical for collagen synthesis. These are tools specifically designed to repair the damage.
I don't dispute the validity of Rongoa. In fact, I think it's vital. But let's look at the honey aspect, which is often grouped with these natural remedies. Manuka and Kanuka honeys are touted for their antibacterial and immunostimulatory properties, and they are excellent, topically or in small amounts. But, metabolically, they are still sugars. The material warns that they must be used with judiciousness. If a person believes they are being healthy by heaping Manuka honey onto a diet that already exceeds WHO sugar guidelines, they are contributing to the glycation load. It's the health halo effect. Just because it's natural and native doesn't mean it's metabolically free. It feeds into the same glucose dysregulation that drives aging. You might be helping your immune system slightly while simultaneously stiffening your collagen through glycation.
I'm not convinced by that, because it assumes people can't distinguish between therapeutic use and overconsumption. The regenerative blueprint implies a conscious strategy, not gluttony. A teaspoon of Manuka is medicine, a cup is a dessert. I think we have to give people credit for being able to learn nuance. And this brings us to the most practical aspect of our debate, how we actually eat these foods, the preparation paradox.
Longevity isn't just about ingredients, it is about method.
Precisely. My strategy involves steaming and poaching. These are traditional methods that preserve the integrity of the bioactives. If you steam that king salmon, you preserve the omega-3s and the astaxanthin. If you steam your vegetables, you keep the vitamins intact. And hydration plays a huge role here. The material mentions T catechins and chlorogenic acids in coffee are associated with preserved cognitive function. It's a holistic approach to chemistry. By cooking gently, we minimize the damage and maximize that structural protection I mentioned earlier.
That all sounds lovely, but I come at it from a different way because we have to deal with the cultural reality of Aotearoa. We have a barbecue culture. It is embedded in our social fabric. And this is where the chemistry turns against us. Let's talk about advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These nasty compounds are formed when sugars bind to proteins or fats under high heat. And the data is just staggering. A grilled steak can contain up to 10,000 kilo units of AGEs per serving. Compare that to the same meat stewed or steamed. Negligible levels.
But surely the body has mechanisms to clear these compounds?
It does, but they are easily overwhelmed. And what do these AGEs do? They cross-link collagen and elastin. Think of a net. Young skin and arteries are like a flexible fishing net. AGEs act like glue, sticking the strands together until the net becomes a rigid grid. They literally stiffen your arteries, raising your blood pressure, and wrinkle your skin. You mentioned kiwi fruit helps synthesize collagen. Well, the Saturday barbecue is actively destroying it. And it's not just one barbecue. It's the frying, the roasting, the deep-fried fish and chips. This high-heat cooking creates a massive load of inflammatory compounds. My argument is that this is a structural cultural barrier. You can eat all the Fijo as you want, but if you're consistently bombarding your body with 10,000 units of AGEs and nitrates from processed bacon and salami, you are structurally aging your tissues faster than any antioxidant can possibly repair them.
That is a grim picture, but I would argue that knowledge is the antidote. Understanding that steaming reduces AGEs allows us to modify our behavior while still enjoying the food. We can choose to poach the mussels rather than fry them. We can marinate meat in acidic marinades like lemon juice or vinegar, which actually inhibits AGE formation during cooking. That is a simple, actionable change that bridges the gap between your concerns and my optimism.
Can we, or will we continue to prioritize flavor and tradition over biological preservation? The metabolic trap is sticky. It tastes good. That's why it's a trap. And let's be honest, steamed steak just doesn't have the same ring to it as a sizzling sirloin. The sensory experience of the Maillard reaction, that browning we love, is literally the process of glycation. We are evolutionarily wired to crave the very thing that ages us.
I see what you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on our capacity for change. The very fact that we are having this conversation, drawing on data about biological age, suggests a shift. We're moving from eating to fill the belly to eating to fuel the cell. People are realizing that health isn't just about weight loss, it's about resilience. As we move to our conclusion, I want to reiterate my stance. We are not helpless against the environment. Aotearoa provides a dual strategy. Yes, we must reduce the harm, but the primary driver of longevity here is the unique potency of our food. By aligning with the land, eating the berries that survive the UV, eating the mussels that filter the ocean, we absorb that resilience. The evidence for green shell mussels repairing joints and black currants activating the NRF2 pathway is proof that we can reverse or at least significantly slow the fate of aging.
It is about high-potency intake to build a fortress against the elements. We have the tools right here in our backyard, and they are stronger than you give them credit for.
And I maintain that the fortress is being built on quicksand if we don't address the foundation. My final reflection is on those three drivers. Bioactives are the icing, but the metabolic lifestyle is the cake. Unless we stop the pro-aging exposures, specifically the excess sugar, the high heat charring of meat, and the processed foods, the biological clock just keeps accelerating. You cannot supplement your way out of a lifestyle that is chemically designed to eat you. The metabolic trap is the dominant force, and until we dismantle it by changing how we cook and what we drink, the native bounty can only do so much. We have to stop hurting ourselves before we can start healing ourselves.
It seems we have reached a point of convergence on one thing, though. Longevity in Aotearoa is not an imported formula. It is specific to this place.
Absolutely. The high UV environment requires high protection. We both agree that the solution lies in the intersection of modern science and local resources. It's about being smarter than our environment.
Whether you focus on maximizing the intake of protective bioactives or minimizing the intake of pro-aging toxins, the goal remains the same: preserving the biological integrity of the body.
Indeed. It requires a conscious choice every single time we step into the kitchen. The fork is the most powerful tool we have.
Thank you for joining us on The Debate. We hope this discussion has illuminated the complex interplay between our land, our diet, and our cells.
And we encourage you to look at your own plate and ask, is this meal aging me or repairing me?
Until next time, goodbye.